Welcome back, shooters. As usual, Brian and Adam here, and we are going to dive into our review and thoughts of episode number 7 and episode number 8 of The Last Dance. Had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff we want to talk about. What were your initial thoughts, Brian? Obviously, I think 2 of the better episodes of this series.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked a little bit before we jumped on. Is the thing that I like about it now is these are the teams that I really remember. Like I vividly remember the teams here as we start to get into the mid to late 90s. And so that part of it's fun. I think a couple of my biggest takeaways were a reoccurring theme that I continue to see is that one, you just don't piss off Michael Jordan. Don't find a way to motivate him. I mean,
Yeah. And even if you don't piss him off, he lies to himself to get himself motivated. That's so funny to me.
Just wild on how all that goes. I know we kind of just talked about his competitive edge, but that was a reoccurring theme throughout both these episodes. I was just like, man, don't say that. Horst referred to when they were like, oh, 45 he's not 23.
Not 23.
And
yeah.
You
And
know.
Horace knew because obviously he had spent some time with Jordan. But honestly, even nowadays, even if you're playing against somebody who's not Michael Jordan, you just don't want to. I don't want to throw gas on the fire.
No, you definitely don't want to poke the bear when it comes to that. So.
Yeah.
No, that part, I would say that was probably, again, the biggest takeaway. And like I said, just as we're getting further down the timeline, it's just becoming more and more fun because obviously we're getting older as well. And so it's starting to be like, oh, I remember where I was at during that. I remember where I was at, when that happened. And so that part of it's been really cool. And the baseball side of it was fun too. It was neat to see some of that because I like the 13-game hitting streak and some of that stuff. It's like you forget. I remember people saying, he wasn't bad. It was something that if he could have stuck with. And so revisiting the baseball side of it was pretty neat and pretty fun too. It was fun. I thought that both episodes were a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, I think one aspect of the show that gets overlooked and one reason why I kind of like, or another reason why I like this why I like the series is because there's a lot of stuff that I like, little things that I just either misremembered or even, forgot. Number one was that when B.J. Armstrong played for the Hornets, we talked about that before we hopped on here too. I honestly do not remember that at all. But then when they showed him hitting that shot, for some reason I remember him hitting that shot and being like, oh, that had to feel good for him. And then I kind of thought too, I was like, oh, Michael's not going to like that. We'll watch that shot, and it proved to be right. And Michael just flipped it on another switch for the rest of that series, and showed why he's the greatest.
Well, and I feel like too, I remember you start seeing some of those guys, obviously Glenn Rice and some of those other guys on the Hornets, where you're like, oh man, I start to, like I said, it starts to come back to you.
Yeah.
Remember some of these guys, even that Nets team. Kendall Gill and Kerry Kittles and some of those guys too. It's like, oh yeah.
With Kerry Kittles was another one. I was like, gosh, I told it, like he just slipped my mind completely. Like he was at Nova, he was a stud, and in the league, he could give buckets to anybody that he wanted to. It's fun to remember in those days and remember those players coming through here.
He would wear the one sock up and the one sock down.
Yep. So played against a lot of players that had that at that time too, and I never rocked that myself, but did you?
No, that's a ballsy look to be able to do the one sock up, one sock down. I mean, I don't know. I was willing to go on the edge on a lot of things, but that was not one of them.
Well, another aspect and one of the main aspects of these couple episodes was Jordan retiring. We talked about his baseball career and how good he was becoming. Even Reinsdorf mentioned it that, hey, if he could have had a little more time, if he would have stuck with it, he would have been in the majors for sure. And it's wild to think about the best player in the world on the basketball court could potentially be one of the best baseball players in the world as well. You think about Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders doing that, but to not play a sport for what was it, like 14 years, and then come and play that, and then have people, an owner of a baseball team, saying you could have been in the highest league in the world. It's just crazy and shows athleticism.
Well, and it's crazy too that one thing I never thought of or realized was the fact that he went right from not playing baseball since high school. So like you said, 13, 14 years, they put him right into double A because they knew that no facility would be able to support the media
Yeah.
that would have
Yeah.
to come with that below that. So the fact that, I mean, he didn't even get the normal warm up on the way up, which was another one. Terry Francona, was that
Yep.
right? Yeah, he
Yep.
was. It was interesting too. I never realized that he was his manager down there either, and
I
so
didn't
that
either.
was kind of a neat tie-in with the documentary as well. But yeah, I mean, to go to a game like baseball, and one of the most difficult things in sport is to hit a baseball, and the fact that he was able to make that transition, and I don't know about you, but it's something that we think about. We've had those athletes like you mentioned, Bo and Dion, and obviously MJ, but like obviously we've all thought about LeBron playing football or playing receiver,
Yeah.
tight end, and stuff. And so it's just crazy that how gifted these guys are. And I'll continue to say it, but like when I refer to guys in the NBA, I mean those are the top athletes in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the guys that I think that can go out and have a better chance than probably any other sport to do athletic movements, whatever it is, catch a ball, throw a ball, run,
Yeah.
stop, jump, all that stuff that they do on a continuous basis. I think more than any sport, those guys, and I think it was reflected through that path that Jordan went on.
Yeah. And while it was a shock to, I mean, a lot of the world when he did retire, I would guess, at least in my mind, that my initial thoughts were, okay, he's going to do this, and then at some point he's going to come back to basketball, and he obviously did. What was very interesting to me is the documentary made it seem like he came back, just because, he had lunch or breakfast with BJ, then he asked him to practice just to come see the guys. It sounded like he just shot a couple hoops. Then all of a sudden the next week he's like scrimmaging with these guys, and then all of a sudden I'm back. So that was an interesting, obviously a couple weeks that the documentary went over, that it just seemed like he was like, well, I mean, baseball's on strike, so I might as well just go play basketball again. And he did. And, obviously it took him half a year to get back to where he was, but, he just kind of jumped back in. That was pretty fun to watch too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things. Like they said, BJ was kind of razzing a little bit. The next thing BJ knew, he found himself in a one-on-one match going just hard with MJ, and then turned to 2-on-2 and 3-on-3, and then he starts showing up at the facilities. And I think part of that is just MJ and just his competitiveness, because baseball was his thing. And then, maybe fortunately for us hoop heads that they went on strike. Otherwise, who knows if we would have got Jordan back or not.
Right.
So he's like, well, I got to do something. And so then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here we go. And yeah, I mean, it's just crazy on how it was. I don't know if we'll ever know how well thought out it was, but I also, one other thing with that is from the retirement piece and having David Stern and stuff on there and talking about, because obviously we've all heard the gambling and this and that and whatever. So I thought that was kind of neat too, that the documentary addressed that and then kind of almost put that to bed, that there wasn't anything to do with the gambling.
Yep.
And same thing too with his father's death and how they tried to loop or tie that into some of Jordan's gambling issues as well, and how they pretty much tried to basically kibosh that too, was something else that was, especially in that first episode, that was big.
Yeah, I think with the episodes when they talked about it, I think you're right. They did complete kibosh that. I'm sure that Jordan had a little bit of say in that, but he mentioned in the episode, you're playing at such a high level, you're one of the best in the world. People are going to try to take shots at you and try to knock you down a couple notches. And that's, obviously that's what it seemed like people were trying to do. So interesting how he handled that. When I know it's been a while, but when he was talking about his dad, he was, pretty, in good spirits about it. And then he kind of explained that his dad always taught him that, hey, you got to make a positive out of a negative. And he said it once in there. He's like, so my father was gone, he was dead. So I immediately thought about the positive about it, which was very, I don't want to say weird to me. At the same time, it's honestly how you get over something a lot quicker, and kind of interesting how he went about that in his own mind.
And another thing too was I forgot all about him winning that Sonics championship on Father's Day, and being the first title, obviously after his dad and stuff. And so it's like, at the time, you're just as a kid, you're just excited Bulls won a championship, and so now it's fun to hear those stories, and to see kind of the way in which that he overcame circumstances, and just the added. I mean, there's just and part of the reason why we've been waiting for this documentary is because there's just stories on top of stories on top of stories within this whole web, and this whole experience. And so, yeah, it's really neat to see. Like I said, it was fun to kind of revisit that, and like you said, like even showing like the pictures of him hugging the O'Brien Trophy and stuff, and like, oh, his dad's right there. Like I never even really noticed that before. I mean, seen that picture,
Yeah.
10,000 times, and never noticed his dad kind of on the side of the picture, and just how close those guys were. It was fun to revisit some of that.
Yeah, I think it was J.A. Adande who either mentioned during the episode or maybe I tweeted something. And it was the same for me, that he's like, I've seen Michael laying on the floor with that basketball after that championship 1,000 times, but I've never heard the audio of him sobbing, when he was doing that. And I don't think I have either. It was obviously a touching moment on Father's Day. It makes it a little bit more emotional, I suppose, obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was good. That was a neat little touch, and a neat way to kind of remember and really kind of tie it all together as we look at the episodes.
Yeah, and as you mentioned here at the beginning of this episode here, Brian, we are getting to the point where you and I, and probably a lot of the people who I guess follow us too, are remembering these games a lot more than the early part of Jordan's career. An aspect of that is the shoes. We are both retired sneakerheads, as we've mentioned plenty of times. But this is, I think you said it before, this is kind of the golden era of sneakers. You have, obviously Jordan's had his own shoe for a while, but you're coming into a time where, Pippen gets his own, where, Jordan starts to expand outside of his own shoe. And we talked about, how I would play things is that if I'm playing Jordan, I'm not wearing a pair of Jordans. But I think we saw some of when they showed a clip of or a shot of the Charlotte bench, I think 3 or 4 of those guys were wearing Jordans on that bench when they were in that playoff series too. So a great time for kicks, and great time for new sneakers to come out too, and fun to see all those again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Obviously, that was one of the other things that really took my interest in these last 2 episodes too, was the shoes. And you said, I mean, 95 to 96, it's hard because obviously the years kind of overlap and when the shoes come out. 95, 96 into 97, 98. Was just or 94, 95, and in 95 into 96, 97 was 2 of the golden era of shoes. Penny got his first one, so the Penny ones would have came out in 95. Grant Hill's Fila's would have been first out in 95. The Zoom 95s, which I have with the 3 bubbles on the side. I thought I had them with me. I was gonna flex on those a little bit. Those would have came out then. The Air Max Sensations, which was Chris Webber's, his first shoes. Would have came out then. The Shaq Gnosis would have came out in 95.
Reeboks.
And the Kamikaze, the 2s that Sean Kemp would have wore. Overall 95s, as well as the Jordan 10s. Obviously,
the Sky Pippen comeback shoe.
The I'm back right here. I mean, you gotta love the 10s came out in 95. And then you move to 96, and that's when Pippen, he gets the more up tempos. So now all of a sudden,
love those shoes, by the way.
What's that?
Those are probably my favorite pair of Pippen shoes right there.
Yeah, they're heavy. I know we talked about
so big and so heavy, but I love those shoes.
So the more up tempos, the Nike up tempos came out in 96. The Worm, the Nike, those ones that Rodman had with the laces on the side, those were 96. The Zoom 96s were pretty sweet too. And then obviously then you have the Jordan 11s.
Yep.
Little flex here on the Concords in the
I
red.
I said we're both retired sneakerheads. I think maybe just one of us is retired right now.
Well, I'm not buying any. I just still have a ton. I had, so here's the other thing. I had then the penny twos. I have the black penny twos that I should have somewhere. I couldn't find those. So either a box didn't come over to the new house, or they're upstairs, or they're at my parents'. But so yeah, but I mean, and then after that series, that 96, 97 series is then when the glove got his. And so it's just, I mean, you just kind of go on a ride between 95 to 98 where the shoes were just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because we mentioned it in an earlier episode where I think they said that the Converse Weapon was the most worn basketball shoe. And they were talking about Magic and Larry wearing those shoes. It was honestly, Jordan was one of the first, if not the first, to have his own signature shoe, and was the only one for a long, long time. And during this time, you have the Reeboks coming in with Shaq and Kemp as well, and then obviously the pennies coming out. So they're starting to expand a little bit on who gets their own signature shoe. Which obviously helped out sales and stuff like that too. But yeah, you're exactly right. Some of those you mentioned are just classic shoes, and some that sneakerheads need to have in their closet. Probably the highest echelon in my opinion is probably the 11s. All the colorways they have with those, and I mean, just like honestly, the way they look is just insane. Was that on the episode too where they said that when Jordan first wore those, he couldn't wear them because they had too much white on them. So he just went in his closet and got the Space Jams.
Yeah, just got the Space Jams and wore those instead. Which another thing too. So these have never been worn or tried on, but there was in the episode he was lacing these up again. I'm like, who sends the Jordan unlaced? Like, what is the deal here? Like, what's going on?
Must be different times back then.
Well, yeah, and the fact that he didn't have – I mean, now we've seen the stories with these equipment managers and how they know exactly what and how these guys want their shoes. And Jordan just going to lace him up in his shirt and tie all by himself. So
after he smokes his stogie with a baseball bat in his hand.
Just wild how times are different. But we've said it before. I mean, that's the best part about this documentary. I mean, the highlights and stuff, seeing the games and stuff is fun, but give me more locker room talk and bus trips and all that stuff. Like that's the stuff that we want to see, and that has really been enjoyable for us to get a little look behind the curtain.
Yep, yeah, for sure. The behind the scenes, Gary talking about when he thought he could shut Jordan down because he was wearing him down. When BJ hit that shot and he was yelling at the bench, and all that stuff that you may have assumed was going on in Jordan's head. Now him talking about it is just get you kind of excited again about those teams, even though it was so long ago.
So watching Gary Payton, he is Pat Beverly, first of all.
100%.
I mean, I remember him being more offensively skilled than what little bit I saw in those highlights last night.
Yeah.
He didn't look comfortable shooting. I know he could shoot. There wasn't a natural flow to it, and he could get to the rim. I mean, I remember some of that. But watching him last night, and being undersized and just being a bulldog, I'm like, that's Pat Beverly right there.
100%. And he talks smack to anybody. As what I remember. I mean, him and Sean Kemp. And he's Detlef Shrimp maybe you put in there, but I mean he was right. That Sonics team was nice.
Well, Hershey Hawkins, and then
Hawkins on that, yep.
Sam Perkins.
Yeah.
They had some dudes. They could go.
Sammy Smooth. Yeah, but I mean, they just ran into the best team that's ever been. And there was no, they won a couple games in that series, which probably gave them some confidence. But I mean, they had absolutely no chance.
One other thing too, now that you think about it, when comparing these teams, and what I took away was the fact that I remember not being a huge Scottie Pippen fan while this was going on, and I don't ever really remember. I think I was just in the Jordan spotlight. I was just Jordan. But I remember like people being like, Scottie, you know, like loving Scottie Pippen. I was kind of like, whatever, to Scottie Pippen. But like going on, revisiting the way that like some of his stuff that he's been through, and obviously him like quitting on the team, and you know, just the way in which the things have happened. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But I'm just like, each little like jab at Scottie, I'm like, God, I remember why I don't like Scottie as much.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I get it. You know, you're the man on the team. You know, you've been the man on the team for 1 year, and you know they don't trust you to make a last second shot. But I mean, it's you quit on your team. That's exactly what happened. And I mean, he's a grown man, a professional, and he did quit on his team. I think it would have been a bigger deal if I mean, Kukoc would have missed that shot. I think that kind of gave him an out to say, hey, I was that's my bad. However, yeah, just what a
bad move. It's just bad luck, and
what a crap move, man.
From the other side of things too, I mean, what would have happened if Kukoc would have missed? Then would he have been like, see? I mean, it's still not a good decision, even if he misses.
Been labeled right about it, then it's kind of tough to say, but yeah, I mean, that was a huge shot Tony hit. I remember that shot too. That was exciting.
Yeah, no, that was good. It was fun to see, fun to relive. Super excited too. Looking forward. Just you can never have enough Reggie Miller, and so I'm excited to hear Reggie and his input. That's one of the other things about the documentaries that I absolutely probably have loved the most is when they hand the iPad or whatever to Jordan and they let him in on the interviews. That's been my favorite. I mean, the Isaiah Thomas, obviously Gary Payton, all that. I just love to hear his reaction and watch him when he's watching those. So I'll be interested to see here in the next last two episodes with the Reggie and his commentary. And I mean, Reggie's just funny too.
Yeah, Reggie's a good dude. Obviously a good basketball player, and they had some battles. 100%. They had some definite battles. I think I actually watched their game when they went to blows in Indiana. When I was on the treadmill just on YouTube a couple weeks ago. I mean, that was a phenomenal game, and if I can remember, I hope I'm getting this right, but I think Reggie was assessed a flagrant foul and maybe a personal foul, and Jordan wasn't assessed anything. Reggie might have been kicked out of that game too. I can't remember, I guess, but just kind of funny to hear that and say, oh, now I get it.
Well, it's so funny too because I mean Reggie never backed down from anybody, and I mean you talk about those guys while playing. I couldn't stand Reggie until later on in his career, and then I started to appreciate him. And now, I mean, it's funny because you know now he has more of a grown up perspective, and like he can kind of see all angles of it, and so to hear him kind of drop little snippets of you know where he was at then and how competitive he is, and realize that it's not. I mean, there's bigger things in basketball now, and so I don't know. I'll be excited to see not only relive that, but to just get his input and his take on stuff too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you know, as we said, it was a couple of the best episodes of the series. I'm expecting as good, if not even better, next couple episodes next week, which is the finale. So I already got the finale sensation going, saying, man, this needs to continue at least a couple more months, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But we appreciate you listening and watching and everything. As we mentioned last week, you can find this on our podcast wherever you find podcasts. Search for Shooters Touch, and on YouTube as well, Shooters Touch there as well. And we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Shooters Touch IA, and on Facebook, search for Shooters Touch. We appreciate you listening again. Can't wait to watch it next weekend. And always remember, shooters shoot.